Madam Comptroller, please call item number 2.
Item number 2 is a resolution approving a planned development located at 627 North Tresvant Street and 643 McConnell Street, containing plus or minus 4.61 acres in the residential urban district. This resolution is sponsored by the Office of Planning and Development. The case number is PD18-29.
Councilman Colvett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is our applicant present?
Yes, sir.
Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Brenda Salamito Baser, Salamito Land Planning, 1779 Kirby Parkway, Memphis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. This is item number 2. Is there any opposition? Opposition. Mr. Chairman, do we have cards?
Yes, we have cards.
Right. Mr. Chairman, this case was heard upstairs in committee. It did receive no recommendation. That is correct. We do have staff on hand should any members wish a presentation, but for discussion purposes, I so move it to the floor.
All right. Yeah, this item was moved by Councilman Colvett, seconded by Councilman Morgan. All right, I do have, we will designate and give time on each side. We'll designate 10 minutes on each side for this. So Ms. Baser, you want to go ahead and start with your presentation? So Mr. Whitehead, go ahead and start with your staff report, please, sir. Okay, there you go, Mr. Whitehead. Mic's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Whitehead with the Office of Planning Development. If I can get IT's assistance over here, I'm going to project hard copies of the staff report. My relationship with this computer is not working, and that was the word it uses. This is a projected 14-lot single-family development with lots ranging in size from about 2,400 square feet to about 2,800 square feet. It's to the north of the intersection of Summer, East Parkway, North Parkway, and Tresvant, specifically on the east side of Tresvant, immediately east of the Hind Park neighborhood, and to the west, northwest of Binghamton, north of the Broad Avenue Business District. This plan has gone through several iterations. Mr. Penzis upstairs demonstrated the history of it. It began with a projected development seen here. Tresvant is on the top of the screen. North is to the right of about 16 homes around New Bellevue Church on the north and east sides of the church. That was revised in time for the Land Use Control Board public presentation, which provided for an exit to McConnell. McConnell is the street on the bottom of this screen. Mr. Chairman, the applicant would like to present a modification to this drawing to reduce the number of homes from 16 to 14, and I believe there are some conditions, and with maybe the conclusion of the public hearing, I can guide the body on where those proposed conditions would be embedded within your resolution that regard a perimeter fence and a landscaping screen along the north property line along the private drive there, as well as dealing with the detention pond. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll relinquish the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Whitehead. Applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Brenda Salamito Land Planning. I'm going to give a very brief presentation, but we have a handout there for you that sort of talks about the evolution of the project. But before I do that, I would like to ask that everyone who is here in favor of the proposed project to please stand. So again, the handout that I've proposed to you, I will briefly go through. The developers, the applicants are here, Mr. Ed Apple and Bishop Tony Hastings. Bishop Tony Hastings is the bishop and pastor of the New Bellevue Baptist Church located on the property. The church will remain. The church is a partner with Apple Properties on the subject property. Mr. Ed Apple, at such time, would have first right of refusal in the event that the church decides to move to another location. During the course of our neighborhood meetings and meetings with the Office of Planning and Development and meetings with concerned neighbors both to the east, the west, and to the north, our site plan has evolved in a number of ways. But more specifically than anything else, we've tried to address the concerns of those that are most directly affected. And because of that, I've handed also out just a short bullet list of changes and proposed conditions that the applicants have agreed to. First and foremost, there was concern about the name of the project. So the applicants have agreed they will change the name. Second, there was concerns about landscaping and buffering the properties to the north. If you notice, along the northern property line, we've provided a small landscape buffer, but we've agreed to increase that to approximately 8 to 10 feet to provide additional evergreen landscape plantings. And we also have agreed to provide an 6 to 8 foot site-proof fence around the perimeter of the project. Drainage was a concern. So between Land Use Control Board and today's meeting, our civil engineers have done a study of the property, and you will see the area that's denoted for stormwater detention. That area is accommodating pre- and post-development to a 10-year event, which is required because this is in a sensitive drainage basin. We have the ability to over-detain. Right now, everything flows freely. Without this development, the drainage will not change in this neighborhood. There's about a 10-foot fall from the eastern property line to the western property line, meaning it's higher on the east. So everything east of this property drains onto us. Then it comes through the property and goes under North Tresvant. So we have the ability to detain that and to slow down the drainage so that it doesn't have as much of a negative impact on the adjacent property owners. The values in the area are comparable. We exceed, in some cases, the values of the properties all along the north, south, and east. We're not in competition with Hind Park. We are not going to be in a historic district. The land development pattern in this neighborhood is comparable to what we are proposing. As far as traffic is concerned, single-family homes are the lowest traffic generator. Each home may produce 3 to 4 trips per day. We've agreed that exit only onto McConnell Street, and it will be an entrance and exit only for emergency access. So, and if I could ask Jeffrey, could you put up also the other proposed uses and lot numbers and lot sizes like we discussed in committee? So the property is zoned RU1, which permits single-family, duplex, attached single-family, and a number of other uses that if were developed on this property without the church would far exceed any development that we are proposing. Ownership. These homes will be owned. They will not be rented. They are not going to be Airbnbs. That has been a volunteer for all of Mr. Apple's projects. Currently, Apple Properties has over 20 homes either already approved or under construction in the Midtown Memphis area, some approved by this very city council in the Cooper Young neighborhood, in the historic district of Cooper Young. We have been approved in Leah's Woods, Cooper Young, Roselle Annisdale. So this is a good quality product, new construction, in the $175, $200 to $235 price range. So Jeffrey, if I could get you to put that up. He doesn't. If acceptable, I'm going to introduce Mr. Tony Hastings and to speak on behalf of the New Bellevue Baptist Church.
Thank you, Brenda, Mr. Chairman and Council. I'd like to say that I'm Tony Hastings. I've pastored New Bellevue now 16 years. And
Please state your address for the record.
672 North Tresvant.
Thank you.
I pastored New Bellevue for 16 years. We acquired the property at 672 North Tresvant because after about 8 years of ministry in 2 locations, we had outgrown the current facilities, and my father actually saw that physical location, asked me to go by and pray on that spot of ground, and we did, and I brought some of my leaders here with me today. We prayed on that spot of ground. We purchased the property, and we began to renovate it. We started to renovate it from the inside out, simply because when we purchased it from Faith Temple, there was a lot of crime in the area, and the church that we purchased it from had stated to us, Faith Temple, owned by Mr. and Mr. Houston, that there were many break-ins. So we began to renovate from the inside out, and now we're in the final phase of renovations. And after partnering with Mr. Apple, we're convinced that if given the opportunity, that it will be a beautiful place of worship where many converts can come and share and grow and have a diverse cultural worship experience. We've actually gotten members over the last 8 years, even from the community, both Hines Park and the McConnell Street side as well, that still come by and worship with us. So I'm just asking that the council would look at the facts. When we started this project, we did partner with the city to find out what our do's and don'ts were, and we believe we met these criteria. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And lastly, I will wrap up this part of the presentation with, we received an approval from the Office of Planning and Development, and in the staff report, it cites the criteria for planned developments at this location. We meet all the criteria in the staff report. OPD has concluded that they believe that this will be an asset to the neighborhood. So with that, I'd like to conclude and save anything for rebuttal. Thank you.
All right. Please, Madam Comptroller, mark a minute, 15 seconds for rebuttal. Just so the audience know, I usually block out time, give the same amount of time on both sides, those that are for a case as to those that are against the case. Since we do have a few more speakers that's for the case, and you guys filled out cards, I will honor that and let you guys speak as well. So I will go to Angela Hastings, Michael Sutton, William Hastings, and Jerry Washington. Please come to the podium in that order. Just put a total time of 4 minutes, Madam Comptroller.
Good afternoon to the Chairman and to the Council. I would just like to say I am Angela Hastings, and I am the wife of Bishop Hastings.
Please state your address for the record.
Okay, 672 North Tresvant. Okay, I just would like to say that our church has been existing since 1956 under the late Curtis Price. And we, in 2003, Bishop Hastings was elected as the pastor. And since then, we have moved from 875 Crockett. We moved to our new vision, which is 672 North Tresvant. And our goal, basically, here, our vision is to have a beautiful edifice for anyone in the city, in the neighborhood that would like to come and worship with us. It's open, the doors are open for anyone that would like to come out and worship. And our vision also is to complete the exterior and also the interior. But our main goal is for the vision for everyone to provide a beautiful edifice for everyone to come and worship. Thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Sutton, 672 North Tresvant.
Can you
And
please state we need, pause the clock, Madam Comptroller. Just for the record, we got to have your home address for the record.
584 Benham Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, 38127.
Thank you, ma'am. All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Go ahead, proceed.
New Bellevue is a ministry that caters to the entire man. And so in our ministry, we have the opportunity to serve a group of people. Everybody who attends our church may not be privileged, but they have a soul that we do minister to, and that we're there in order to help alleviate some of the ills that are happening in our community today. And so as a ministry, we're able to meet the needs of each and every person that comes through the building. We do not discriminate against anyone coming to worship, irregardless of their economic background. We are there strictly to ensure that a hurting soul can come in and have a place of refuge and of safety. Our ministry, we reach out and we assist in many different facets in the community. And we want to continue to be able to meet the needs of the people that we serve at New Bellevue under the leadership of Bishop Hastings. Thank you.
Thank you. Have Jerry Washington, William Hastings, I believe that's the other two cards I have.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Council. My name is Willeen Hastings.
Okay.
My address, excuse me, my address is 3113 Oakley Manor Code, 38138. I'm standing here on behalf of the New Bellevue Ministry. As you've heard previously, our only objective is to provide a place of worship for any and every Memphian to come, a place of refuge, a place of comfort, a place where we can help garner some of the ills that's plaguing our community. Our congregation is made up of many, many youth. We have tried to help mold the minds as well as the souls and spirits of these young people, stop some of the violence. We have had up to 50 funerals in our congregation this year thus far. And our goal, and as our pastor and leader funeralized these young folk in our city, he's able to draw some of them in and say, there's a better way. That's our only goal. I'm a native Memphian, been here all my life, walked up and down the streets of Tresvant, Springdale, North Parkway, and our goal is to get and help some of the young people, old people, black people, white people. We are not here to discriminate. We obtained that building through blood, sweat, and tears, and we would like to complete the vision. Thank you. And I hope you all will be kind enough to honor that.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, I have one more card, but ran out of time, and now to honor those that are opposed. Madam Comptroller, please put 10 minutes on the clock, please. And please pay attention to the clock. You do have others that would like to speak that are against this case as well. I have Sam Goff, Charles Walinki, I believe that is. Can't really make that out. It looks like an E. But Blakeney or Blinkley, Gordon Bowen, Bobby Carter, War Wayman, and Sonia Pollard, in that order, please. Please, if you heard your name, please come to the podium. You have 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, City Council, for hearing me. My name is Wayman Ward. I live at 735 McConnell. I'm a retired police captain, and I've lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years. I've seen this street change a lot. It went from a quiet neighborhood to what it is today. A shortcut for people looking to avoid traffic at East Parkway in Treasury and Jackson in Treasury. One of the owners at 637 McConnell, Mr. River Ross, if you mind stand up just a second, bought the house and cleared the lot off, where now children plays and it's a social gathering for people that live on the street. Although we were unable to get speed bumps placed on McConnell, it has not deterred the traffic at all. It's only turned the speed bumps into large potholes, which is another issue. Our children are not safe on the street as people keep speeding down the street, and with additional traffic, it's only a matter of time before someone is seriously hurt. Please reconsider making this street into a major street and keep it residential where families can live without the threat of additional traffic and chaos that will come from it. Thank you.
My name is Sonia Pollard. I live at 665 North Tresvant, and my property faces the proposed development. In the nearby residential property comparison section of the proposal, the planner manipulates the median and average numbers for the total living area of the home by removing all 11 homes on the west side of Tresvant in order to obtain a more realistic measuring standard for the immediate neighborhood. This manipulation is an effort to camouflage the reality that these units are not at all consistent with the size of the majority of the homes that will be impacted by this proposed project. I've been a residential mortgage banker here in Memphis for 20 years. THDA and the City of Memphis housing agencies, along with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, have all designated the subject property census tract as a targeted tract for special programs available for owner-occupants. With city, state, and federal agencies targeting the area to increase homeowner occupancy in the census tract, shouldn't all new development in the area be consistent with that goal and focus toward homeowner occupants? Mr. Apple insists that his plans are to sell these units, but he has not disclosed if he plans to list the units for sale with a realtor, and he has not disclosed if they will be available to all buyers with all types of financing, including down payment assistance programs. He's also not met with us since the first community meeting. That's the only time we were contacted. The developer has been vague at best regarding the size and sales price of these units. Based on the 1,200 to 1,400 square foot estimate, we were told they would sell for between $210,000 and $235,000, approximately $175 to $180 per square foot. With the help of some realtors, I searched the comparable sales, but there are no true comparable sales due to the small property size and substandard lot size. The closest thing we could find were two new properties on $3,000 to $4,000 lots with almost twice the square footage, which sold for approximately $131 to $141 per square foot. This creates a more realistic estimate of value for the proposed units between $157,000 and $197,000. It's doubtful that an individual buyer wanting to finance one of these units would be able to get a loan approved because there are not comparable sales for an appraiser to use that would be acceptable to a lender. That leads me to conclude that these properties are intended to be sold to investors for cash or alternative financing. I checked the website for city cottages. It just reinforced my opinion that this is a very thinly veiled attempt to sneak a detached townhouse community for investors into our stable, established neighborhood of single-family detached properties. I've also spoken with two experienced Memphis appraisers to discuss the proposed development and its impact on property values. Both appraisers concurred that due to the size and density of the units, the presumed architecture, the quality, condition, and grade materials used to construct these type of units, that the presence of these units would be a detriment to our property values, which would only be exacerbated if multiple units are sold as rental units. We would welcome smart, thoughtful development in our community. It's impossible to presume that this proposed development will not damage the use, value, and enjoyment of the surrounding property based on the information we have available at this time. Please deny.
All right. Madam Comptroller, please pause the clock for a second. Just so you guys know, you only have 10 minutes for you guys that are opposing. And so just be mindful, we have several cards. want to speak, and you have 5 minutes and 38 seconds remaining. So I have you guys, please come up to the podium. Madam Comptroller, please start the clock. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Boyd and other members of the City Council. I'm Gordon Bowen. I'm here with my wife, Kara Bowen. We reside at 694 North Tresvant Street. We are the property that is immediately north of the 672 North Tresvant PUD. So there's been considerable community response in opposition to the PUD, including 69 emails that were sent out to the Land Use Control Board and 260 signatures on a petition that we presented to you guys today. We feel as though the city is showing priority to investor dollars while overlooking the existing residents who have already made the largest investments that they'll make in their lifetime. Half of our residents have been here for longer than 15 years, and we chose to invest in the city of Memphis when other people were fleeing for what I'll call suburban flight within the context of this conversation. We pay premiums for the historic homes because of their character, unique construction, adequate space, and the mature trees of the neighborhood. The vast discrepancy between the existing neighborhood and these units will diminish the unique character of our community. We feel as though it's purposely deceptive to utilize the comps from McConnell and East when the main entrance to the property is on North Tresvant, and the views affect the homes to the southwest and north of the property. The 35 to 50 additional vehicles will enter through Tresvant and cause congestion and circulation problems within the neighborhood. The UDC recognizes that the consistency of the blackface, but this is not compatible at all to it. Deviating blackface orientation segregates these units from the existing neighborhood, leaving us all with a diminished sense of value, and it's not consistent or complementary to the existing neighborhood. Approval of subdivisions is supposed to be of higher quality than otherwise possible. This is simply a maximization of development on a gerrymander path for profit's sake. This doesn't warrant letting go of the current standards, and as good stewards of our community, we recognize this is not an improvement upon the use of the land stipulated by the UDC code. Allowing these deviations is starkly against the public interest. The density of 4 units on this development on what would be one stately home on the immediate lots sharply contrasts with the other homes in an extremely negative way. The subdivisions are required to provide visual and acoustical privacy for the units and adjacent property, but 6 feet between the units and moving the private drive means tearing down the existing tree line with no plan for an adequate wall. Adjacent residential properties turn into corner lots, and we don't have the ability to revise our setbacks to mitigate the problem. We can't plant our own barriers due to the storm drain bordering all 3 lots next to the church, and the fence does not provide the same acoustical barrier, water retention, or aesthetics. There are also no street-facing wooden fences on the block with the exception of one short picket fence on the lot. This is not environmental design that's of higher quality than possible under regulation, and standard regulation would cause less flooding, water runoff, water retention for surrounding properties. Even in the one brief letter of support, they cited flooding and water concerns. Homeowners can't mitigate this damage with flood insurance, and we obviously can't build our own underground water retention systems. I spoke with 2 contractors about ongoing basement flooding, and the water pressure from the ground can float the foundation of your home, similar to what happens when you cement a pool. Additional above-ground water retention and grading causes sitting pools of water, which, as you guys know, creates a mosquito and pest breeding ground. We see the previous approval of small cottages or row homes is used to justify further expansion into other parts of the city. But we fear this shows prospective home buyers that even if they invest in an established neighborhood with historical character, any vacant lots, or in this case, occupied lots, are subject to development that's untailored to their community and neighborhood concerns without much protection from the UDC code or the city council. The common thing among the correspondence is how we're supportive of positive development abiding by standards of contextual infill. Utilizing the current city infrastructure on Tresvant, Holly, and McConnell utilities lessens the segregation, traffic, and other implications that may come up. Also, the risk from lead water contamination that we have within the community. Only a brick wall or a combination of brick and iron fence would be in character and good for use as an acoustic and visual barrier here. We feel as though investment is necessary to address the current flooding and drainage situation here without causing additional above ground detention issues. So we would like for this development to require underground retention to mitigate the impending harm that is coming up. We would like the promise of no dwelling units to be used for short-term rentals like Airbnb, and we realize even them saying that is useless and unenforceable after the first sale of the unit. The developer has the ability and must ensure that they instill a covenant. And given the desire to increase homeowner occupancy in this region by the city and federal lenders, that code stipulates that homeowner occupancy does not create a new transient population within the PUD. The Land Use Control Board should protect our property and not allow for the exploitation of it, and should vote and deny just as they have other harmful projects. The UDC was designed for us to not have to negotiate wide variances and to protect the integrity of our community.
Please wrap it up, sir. You guys are out of time. All right, council members, I come to you. Councilman Morgan, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was under the impression there was still rebuttal time from Mrs.
They
Solomita.
have 1 minute, but if you have a direct question towards them, you can ask them, they can answer, but the rebuttal time is 1 minute and 53 seconds.
I was just going to wait towards the end of all the comments, so I'll allow them to go first. I'll defer.
Okay. If you have a rebuttal, is 1 minute, 53 seconds.
Thank you, sir. Yes, briefly, we'd like to...
Please, hold on. Put the clock up, please.
Right. Thank you. Briefly, traffic. Again, the single-family homes are the lowest traffic generator there is. 2, the comps in the area, you look to OPD numbers. Those are not my numbers. 3, drainage. I've kind of discussed the drainage. Happy to discuss it more in detail. Without this development, nothing changes. The drainage will be as bad as it is now. And then the homes are for sale, period. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Morgan.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for everybody that's come out on this issue. Obviously, this is not an easy one, and this is unusual for a number of reasons. A lot of times on these zoning cases, we don't actually see almost an equal number of people in the crowd for and against. Another reason it's unusual, this is a newer type of construction. This is a newer product to the market, and although we've seen it in a few cases, we haven't necessarily have several years or even decades of this type of construction in Memphis to see what will happen next. And then also, at least in my 3 years, I haven't seen a partnership like this with a church side by side in a development. And I think that takes different consideration than some of the cases that we've heard in the past. And so,
Disregard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I want you all, I hope you all honestly believe me when I say, this has been a struggle, and I think it's a close call, and a lot of decisions that have to be made on faith. And I'll get into a little bit of the pros and cons first, but I want each of my colleagues to know, since this, obviously everybody's up and free to make up their minds and ask questions on their own and try to determine what they think is right in their best judgment as well. But for me, I come down on the position I'm going to be voting in favor of this today. There's some amendments that I think, Mr. Whitehead, I'd like for you to clarify maybe either now or towards the end of the debate. So some of the pros that I've taken first. Unique partnership with the church. The values of the home, we pulled up all the assessor's values as well. And these, so this is not the developer's numbers. Our staff did it at OPD. Our staff did it at City Council. And if you look up, well, we don't have the map, but if you look up the properties that back up to it directly to the east on McConnell, the range of those assessed values was between $48,000 and $69,000 in value. That back up directly to the property. Those were pulled from the assessor's website yesterday. If you look to the properties to the north and to the south, there's some variance. There's some that are higher. There's some that are lower. There's some right at that marketed value. And there's been a debate about what the value of these homes will be. I heard even on the low side closer to 153 and on the high side to 225. Another one of the difficult things about this case, or one of the things I like about it, is I'd have to defer to some of the other developers on the council about this, but I don't know of a lot of new home single families that are being built in this price range. And not every home that gets built in Memphis can be $400,000. And for some people, this is not attractive home to move into. They think of it as a downgrade next to their property, but then there are others, and there's a huge swath of people in Memphis where this would be a tremendous upgrade. And this would be a step up from low income to kind of middle low income housing that's affordable for them in a gated community with a church that provides safety for them that we aren't unfortunately able to offer in every neighborhood in Memphis, including some that are very nearby here. So I have to take in consideration that need of the city. Now, on some of my concerns that have been addressed, we've had a lot of conversations about drainage. There's absolutely no doubt that we have a flooding issue in Hind Park with anything above kind of a medium to strong rain. It doesn't even have to be a 10 or 25-year flood. We've got issues. We've been discussing that at City Hall for a while now. I have to trust kind of the judgment of our engineers and experts here and the conditions that we've placed in this plan development that this will do nothing to make the drainage worse. That has to be done. And that detention pond, if anything, should be helpful to it. And I think going forward, we're going to have a clearer arrangement between the property owners, meaning the church, and the city of Memphis, who's responsible for clearing, maintaining, and taking care of that cypress draining ditch. And also one of the concerns is the character of the neighborhood. And I have to look at this property and the condition it's in now, the condition it's been in for decades. And I have to think that this, and again, this goes to the point where I think we have to go on faith, just based on the reputation of Bishop Hastings, based on the reputation of Mr. Apple, that is their best interest for this to be an improvement to a property, improvement to the neighborhood, rather than a drawback from it. In the existing condition of the property, I hope that this will be an improvement with the landscaping, with the fencing, and that it's in their best interest. I don't think they have any intent for these homes to be rented out to people that would be irresponsible or negligent, either in their behavior in the neighborhoods or in the way they maintain the property in the surrounding area. So based on their reputation, I give them a little bit more leeway than I would say others that have come before this council. Sorry, almost have to take a breath, and I can hear the sigh of disappointment from a lot of people in the audience, and I understand that. Like I said, this is difficult, and I know my colleagues will have some questions and maybe different opinions, and I'll be happy to listen to those. And Mr. Whitehead, do you think this is the most appropriate time to discuss those conditions, regardless of whether this passes or fails? I think at least these conditions will be a benefit that have been discussed, and we'd like to add in.
Can I have thank you. Again, Josh Whitehead with the Office of Planning Development. Between the conversations you and I have had, as well as the offered conditions by the applicant, I count 5 amendments that would satisfy at least some concerns among the applicant and you yourself. Amendment number one would be strike the title on the City Council resolution that reads Hind Park Plan Development. We're striking the term Hind Park. Amendment number 2 would be a new condition, Roman numeral 4, letter F. A minimum 8-foot landscape screen shall be provided along the north property line that will utilize both existing vegetation and new 3 to 4 foot evergreen plantings. Amendment number 3, again in Roman numeral 4, a new paragraph G. A 6 to 8 foot site-proof fence shall be installed along the perimeter of the site. Amendment number 4, under condition Roman numeral 6, a new paragraph C. The on-site detention shall be designed to accommodate a 25-year flood event. The reason for that is it is standard operating procedure for our developments to involve runoff less than or equal to after development as compared to pre-development, but this would ensure to go that next step above and accommodate a 25-year flood event. And finally, amendment number 5, under Roman numeral 6, a new letter D that reads, the portion of the drainage culvert on the subject property shall be kept clear of any obstructions to allow the free flow of stormwater.
Okay. Without objection, Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer those 5 amendments into the record.
All right, without objection. All right. Okay, Councilman Hedgepeth, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got some questions for the applicant. Salmito. Do you have any front elevations of these homes?
If you look in the handout, the thick 11 by 17 handout, the architects, Architecture Inc., Joey Hagan, Valentina Cochran, and Chooch Picard have done a study of all the homes
I don't
in the
have much
neighborhood.
time. Do we have any front elevations of these houses?
We have not produced
Because
the
all the
exact ones.
design inspirations are of houses on 50 to 75 foot wide lots. So these designs are not a true picture of what's going there.
They'll be taking elements from existing homes in the
So
neighborhood. to
no
create
front
a lot.
elevation of these houses.
We
Is
have
that
not
correct?
produced those yet, no, sir.
Okay. Number two, are these going to be rentals? No. Okay. Do you mind if I add a friendly amendment in the PD that states none of these houses will be used as rentals?
Now, does that restrict a future buyer
Yes.
down the road as
Yes.
well?
Yes.
I am not going to rent them, but that is, I mean, is that customary? as
Okay,
far
but if
as-
you sold them to somebody, you know what's going to happen with these houses. I've seen how they're designed. So if we put a restrictive covenants in the PD that says no rentals, you would be okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
Great, thank you very much. Number three, what type of foundations will these houses have?
Conventional foundations.
Conventional? Are they built there on site?
They're built there on site.
These houses are built on
They're
site?
built on site.
Okay.
Councilman Hudspeth, there's one of the conditions in the outline plan conditions proposed by OPD states that these will be built on conventional foundations with masonry bases. So there are conditions about building materials in the outline plan conditions that we're in agreement with.
Just to repeat, all these houses will be built on site. They will not be brought in.
Built on site.
Okay. Can we, Mr. Whitehead, can you please pull up a density map of this area?
A density map?
Density map of this area. Okay. The approximate average of these lots are 2,500 square feet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What are the lots directly across the street?
Cross Trezevant,
Yes.
those are probably at least 15, maybe 20,000 square feet.
Are there any lots in this immediate block that are under 10,000?
To the east along McConnell, those are likely close to 10,000, if not a little below.
Okay. Council members, I'm probably the most pro-development and builder on this body. And this is not a good development for this area. Not only is it extremely out of character of the area, I have a strong feeling that these will all be rentals in this area. Therefore, I'm voting against it, and I would hope you would also. Thank you.
Councilman Conrad, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I just want to thank everybody that's come down on both sides of this issue. It's not easy to get downtown and navigate parking and City Hall, so your time's valuable, and I appreciate everybody coming down. I know we heard kind of who was for this. If you're in opposition, could you just raise your hand? Okay. After you heard the conditions that were put on this, if you now support it, would you raise your hand? Okay. For the folks that are against it, that are here, and we got all your emails and letters, and appreciate that. And the main issues seem to boil down to the drainage and then the density. If the density were solved for, if it weren't as dense, and obviously the drainage, the city engineer is going to weigh in on that, but if this development weren't quite as dense and the lots were more based on everything around it, and it met more of the kind of UDC standards, Can I just get a quick show of hands? Who would still oppose this if it weren't as dense? Well, I mean, if it's this, but just not as dense and the drainage we're solved for. Okay, all right. Thank you. I was just trying to get a sense. So it sounds like there's, that's my biggest issue. One question, one thing about the drainage, and didn't realize really until when I looked at the developer's document on the 10-year event and the 25-year event, and this really isn't just for this case, but I think we had a 500-year event in 2008, 2009, and 2010. We had a 1,000-year event in 2011. And I know we can't design everything to a 100-year event, or it costs developers a fortune, but definitely something I think we have to think about, especially in this basin. And I've seen many a house and basement that have been flooded in this area, so that is definitely a concern of mine. The fact we don't have front elevations to look at before we're voting, I'm personally not comfortable with that. Mr. Whitehead, just quickly on the I guess deviation from the UDC guidelines. Can you just give us a bit of context around that in terms of other projects and how many times we've seen anything that's this different from the UDC in terms of the variance that's being asked for?
So there's really one key element between plan developments and subdivisions. Subdivisions, which can begin and end with the Land Use Control Board, adhere to the lot size required for the zoning district, the front yard setback, the side yard setback, etc. So when you see residential plan developments, in 90% of the time, they are a plan development and not a subdivision because of their lot size. So this zoning in this area is the RU1 zoning district. RU1 is a somewhat complicated zoning district because it allows for a number of uses. If you're a duplex, you have to have 8,000 square feet. If you're a cottage, you need a lower amount, 4,000 square feet. But this is a planned development because under none of the permitted uses in the RU1 zoning district can you have a lot as small as what we have presented here, and that is about 2,400 square feet. In addition to the size, another variance requested with this PD are some of the setbacks, particularly on the back side facing the church. So lot size and setbacks are the two biggies.
Okay, and has there been anything that was more of a deviation from what the neighborhood character than this, or that you can remember? It seems very dense.
So when the Unified Development Code came online on January 1st of 2011, it included a section that the previous 3 zoning codes did not. And it covers situations in which you have a predominance of large lots that exceed the bare minimums of the zoning district. Think the ultimate example perhaps is East Parkway or Walnut Grove. Those lots are 2, 4, 10 acres in size with 200-foot front yards. What the UDC came in and said is if you want to subdivide those lots, you can do so under a various number of processes, but you have to be contextual. You have to have setbacks that are in context with the lots on either side of your project on Walnut Grove, let's take as an example. However, there's a big asterisk to that, and that is that limit, that rule on contextual infill standards is limited to 2 acres, site of 2 acres or less. So when you have larger sites such as this, it really just goes back to the city council to determine whether a plan, under the big test of plan developments, whether a plan development has a negative impact on the neighborhood. That is, in a nutshell, the test you're being asked to answer with every plan development.
Okay, thank you. My questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Conrad. Councilwoman Fully Love, you recognize.
Thank you. Excuse me. I want to thank everybody for coming out today, voicing your opinion, but God has told me to go ahead and vote for this project, and I'm going to do just that. And, you know, it hurts me that some people, sit and look at others and say, those poor, poor, poor people, I don't want to have anything to do with them. You can't be like that and be Christians. You cannot. So I'm voting for this project. God told me to, and you can bring him forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Fuller Love. Please hold your applause, please. Please. All right. I just have a couple questions as well. On this, Mr. Whitehead, do you have a civil engineering plan that was given to this particular project? Because I was looking at the preliminary drawings and I don't see a civil plan. I don't see any architectural renderings for elevations for the project. And because my main concern, I'm a proponent for this project. I'm for it. However, I'm just curious about the civil plan with the drainage. I'm looking at the parking lot, the ingress egress of both parking lots, kind of where it's draining. Is it draining into the retention pond? There is no specific size of the retention pond as far as the capacity of the pond to take the drainage off of the property. There's still certain runoff that you will get. And I just think it's pardon my French, piss poor job not present to us with adequate plans to show us what the size of the retention pond will be, any elevations, because that's my number one concern right now. I'm concerned about the ratio of water that will run off of a new parking lot into that retention pond that might back up and cause additional flooding problems in that community. Can you answer it? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The outline plan process for plan developments is organized in such a way that what the city council is, and for right or for wrong, what the city council is approving is a conceptual plan.
Get it.
Now, when there's unanswered questions such as this, and the applicant has offered this as an added condition, that if approved, when a final site plan with all the jots and tittles taken care of is prepared, that has to have Land Use Control Board review, and then that could be appealed back up to this body. So that is typically when we have infill projects such as this, we'll add a condition that there's an additional public hearing after City Council before the Land Use Control Board, where we do have a public hearing on that fully engineered drawing.
Okay. All right. Well, let me ask this also. Looking at the overall project, are you guys proposing a buffer around the entire project or just you can go ahead and answer that.
Yes, sir, Chairman Boyd. We will be proposing a buffer and perimeter fencing around the entire project. Obviously, not along North Tresvant, but all the landscaping, streetscaping will be provided along North Tresvant, as well as interior to the site and the perimeter.
So your ingress egresses, are they gated?
So can we get a copy of the site plan, the approved site plan? There are 2 existing curb cuts onto North Tresvant. One of those will be utilized by the residences, and that will be gated on the north side. We have that set back 40 feet to accommodate cars pulling off of North Tresvant and coming into the site. The southernmost entrance will be utilized by the church, and they will have their parking area. The area between the east side of the parking lot and the private drive is also gated. Then there is a gate at the McConnell exit, again, because that one is supposed to be for emergency ingress and egress only. and then only for egress.
Are there any ramping, staging on the Tresvant side, or that's for egress only?
The southernmost?
The southernmost.
We're open to suggestions. That's primarily open for the church so that people can come in and out. We had not planned on gating that entrance, the southern entrance, onto North Tresvant.
Let me just make a friendly amendment here. And I mean, I'm for the project, but you said, Mr. Whitehead, it has to go back before land use. Can it please come back before the city council if the councilman of that district, with all due respect, however, I just think there are some things that I want to see after this PD is approved, or if this PD is approved tonight. I just want to see certain things from a civil plan. I also want to see the buffer materials. I want to be able to make recommendations as it pertains. If we're going to put a wrought iron fence in there, it needs to be a condition to say it's a wrought iron fence. And I want to see a landscaping plan, and I want to see elevations because that's a make or break. And I need to know what the overall drainage plan is. That's just my developer hat. I'm concerned about it. I know when I present to request a PD, these are things that I put in my plans. If I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. But at least the council know what they're voting on, or land use control know what they're voting on. So those are my 2 cents. I'm offering an amendment to bring back, if approved, bring it back to the city council for review. No objection?
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, for the record, since I'm going to be presenting this to council records later this evening, that involves an additional sentence on condition Roman numeral 8, which already reads, a final plat shall be filed within 5 years of the approval of the outline plan by the legislative bodies. New sentence. This final plat shall be reviewed and approved by the Land Use Control Board shall be reviewed by the Land Use Control Board and the Memphis City Council and include landscape drawings and elevations of the homes.
As well as civil.
As well as civil plans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Whitehead. That concludes. Close, sir. Sorry. Mr. Conrad, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate those amendments. I guess I'm a little frustrated. We don't have renderings, and as I look at in the book here, these houses are going to be. We've got massing and design inspirations, but I mean these are. You should have come and brought us elevations. I think. I just think this is. I mean, these houses are going to be barely like a third of each of these. I don't even know what this is.
So we had that discussion with the architectural team, Architecture Inc., and weighed on whether to produce the final architectural renderings or to get additional input. I've met with some of the neighbors. We've talked with some of the neighbors. They have asked for the design inspiration, and we're welcome to allow them to help us do the final designs. That's part of the reason why we didn't bring final designs here today, but we haven't always had an open door policy, willing to discuss at any point. I had only been contacted by maybe 3 or 4 people total offering any suggestions or input or concerns out of everybody who opposed us.
And I think it's a great site. I think it could be a great development. I don't think we have enough information. You've asked for some things, Chairman, which are good. I just think we should have those now, and we don't even have an elevation. So I'm not going to vote for something not having an elevation and seeing pictures of massing that have no relation at all, massing to what's on that plan. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Conrad. Councilman Jones, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say, I truly appreciate the insight that Mr. Hedgepeth, you bring to this discussion, Mr. Boyd, you bring to this discussion. This is not my area of expertise, as I'm go on a tangent a bit, but when we talk about term limits, the main thing that I talk about is my having a steep learning curve when it comes to these type of issues. Because I just learned here now that subdivisions, they are approved at the land use control level. We talked about a special use permit a couple of weeks ago and how this relates to a planned development. So I'm still on that learning curve. But I can recall, and I have some reservations about this because it was, Mr. Apple, the last time you came, and we were talking about the development over in the Cooper and Central area. At least when that was brought before us, we had renderings, because colleagues, if you recall, I had concerns about what the exterior is going to be. I forgot the name of it now. You know, this is not my area of expertise, but I talked about, well, could it have at least a brick veneer, because it seemed more, I knew it was going to be a larger expense, but when you talk about the durability of brick versus wood and other material, those were things that were important to me. I can also recall during the time that I was away from Memphis, 86 to 99, this is when that Sam Cooper area, the Evergreen area, this whole part about when we were talking about taking I-40 through Overland Park, I remember coming home and seeing how the new construction fit right in with some of the homes that had been built in the 1920s, 30s, whatever the case may be. So what's important to me in maintaining, and idealistically, I want our neighborhoods to reflect the character that is reflected in the surrounding neighborhoods. And this is something that's important to me. We can be long dead and gone, but I'd like to see just some continuity in our neighborhoods. Not to say that we can't have, more modern designs with that, but without any type of renderings, that term front elevation that I'm sitting here learning from you guys, but without the convenience of that, I'm not in a position to approve this, because I want there to be some harmony between what's already there and what's being proposed to us going forward. So those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Let's see. Don't have any more council members in the queue. All right. So, just go ahead real quick.
Mr. Whitehead, when we talked about the dimensions of these lots, what was it, about 2,000?
2,400.
2,400, okay. I just pulled up, just a sample one over, and what was referenced earlier during the committee was that these lot size were going to be about the same as they are in Harbortown. So I just happened to pull up a sample one. It could be larger ones, it could be smaller ones, but one that I pulled up was 30 by 102. That comes out to about 3,068 square foot for this just one. So this is just one sample. I know that there are other ones. I just happened to pick this one. But I'm having a hard time with we go down from 3,000 or close to 3,100 to 24. I just have some reservations about that too. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. I will say this, Councilman Jones, from a development standpoint, just remember this is a PD. So so your requirements are a little different. So not seeing any council members in the queue. Council members, let's go to a vote. With the amendment as amendment, yes.
Brown, yes. Colvett, yes. Conrad, no. Ford, yes. Fully Love, yes. Hedgepeth, no. Jones, no. Morgan, yes. Robinson, yes. Swearingen, yes. Chairman Boyd, yes.
That item passes as amended.